He breaks down plays better than anyone.
I mean, this is like Shark Week now. And you know what Baker Mayfield is? He's chum. Look at these sharks. You think you're getting away from those 4 angry sharks? It's Shark Week. It's time to eat. Make the read. Urgency. That's the name of the game right here. Urgency. Now, on it. He's on it. Touchdown. Beautiful throw.
He's our 95.7 The Game NFL insider, Brian Baldinger.
Oh, my God. He is back. He is back. He is back for another season. Brian Baldinger. It is Shark Week. Baldy, good morning. Welcome back to the Roast on 95.7 The Game. We're so fired up to have you back on every single week this football season. And I got to ask you right off the rip, Baldy. We got every training camp open now. What is it like as a player that night before you enter training camp to take your physical and go to the facility and go to work for the next season?
I tell you, Bonte, there's butterflies. There's butterflies because, you know, almost everybody, you know, has competition. I mean, every year that I was in the league, all 12 years, like I felt like somebody was there to take my job or I was there to take somebody else's job. And so while training camp isn't quite what it used to be, it's still about competition. And if you're not on your game, if you're not at your best, if you get injured and can't practice, like your job is at stake. So that's the butterflies. Is this the end? Can I continue it? Can I continue to, you know, live this dream of playing the NFL, or is somebody going to take my job? Those create butterflies the night before training camp.
Brian, I missed you so much. Like, so much. I missed you so much. And I've been watching all your videos.
Oh, dude.
South America.
Hey, Shasky, has anybody lived a better life than Baldy this offseason?
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. All right, but I need you to settle a debate for me, okay? Yesterday, Bonte and I got into a heated debate. Now, I think we both agree it's splitting hairs. These are great players, okay? I just said, for my money, and given the scheme that the Niners are running, because that's a part of this as well, I think Nick Bosa is the best player of these three, and I'm going to take him. But I don't think there's a wrong answer. I want to know what you think. I give you Myles Garrett, I give you TJ Watt, I give you Nick Bosa. I know they play in all different schemes, and there's different types of players. Who you taking for your money?
So you're right. This is a great debate. The one thing I've seen from Nick Bosa in a short period of time is his ability to close out a game. And while TJ Watt has not been in those moments in the postseason where he's got a chance to close out a game, I haven't seen that on any regular basis from Myles Garrett. Had a great chance last year against the Chargers in a shootout type game. I want my guy, if you're going to be at the top of the list, a guy that can finish the game. Nick did it last year in Green Bay in a playoff game, taking Aaron Rodgers down twice in the fourth quarter of the game. That's what I'm looking for. Those game-changing plays. Nick did it in the Super Bowl. Got the ball out of Mahomes' hands. He just, they just didn't recover it. But I like Nick Bosa in a big spot. That's where I feel.
I love
you.
But, yeah, well, Baldy. Well, see, listen.
8 career sacks in 6 postseason games. 49er leader in postseason history. I love you, Baldy.
Baldy, I love you too. But I'm taking a guy with 72 sacks in 5 seasons. TJ Watt, 22 and a half sacks. And here's the thing, Baldy. This is why Shasky gets eliminated from this conversation. Because I said, if TJ Watt was on the 49ers, who'd you take? He said he'd probably take TJ Watt.
Because he's got the
red and gold blinders on. I can't do that, Baldy. TJ Watt had 22 and a half sacks.
Listen, look, I'm not like you said, I'm not taking anything away from TJ, but let's get him deep into the postseason, and so I like all three guys are at the top of
They're great.
But I do like Bosa in a big spot better right now.
Oh, you just made his day. He's made his day.
Baldy, I want to spoon you.
He's just made his day.
Baldy, I'm looking at it this way. I'm looking at this 49er team, and let's start on the O-line. We'll get to the quarterback. We'll get to the weapons, all those things. I'm really worried. You got a rookie quarterback, essentially. You got a run game that doesn't have a clearly defined number one back, but that doesn't mean it can't be effective. But you lost the starting center, Alex Mack. I don't know what to make of Aaron Banks at guard. I don't know if it's going to be Brunskill on the other side. I'm worried about the middle of this offensive line. What should I be looking at tomorrow when I go to training camp to maybe kind of temper my expectations for the season?
Well, the one thing that you have to realize, like Aaron Banks played 8 snaps last year. All right, I mean, it was a redshirt season. We get that. Lincoln was phenomenal, just a model of consistency at left guard. But one thing, when you watch practice and you watch that offensive line practice, you watch how much they run. Like, you're running left and you're running right, and you're like, it's every drill is because that's the offense. The offense is a zone read type running scheme, and so you're running. If you're not in shape, you're going to be on the sideline. And so Aaron Banks is a big man. I haven't seen him this offseason. I'm not saying he's not in shape, but that's the first thing I would look at in practice is what's the conditioning level like? Because if you're not in condition in that offense, you're not going to be a good player. So the center position is a big deal. Alex Mack was, I mean, look, they don't just let anybody into Cal Berkeley. You gotta be a smart guy.
No doubt.
And Alex is very, very smart. I thought he was a great signing for the 49ers. I thought he played very well. He decided enough was enough. That's a big position to fill. McGlinchey's coming off a major injury. Look, there's question marks. I think the biggest question mark, honestly, is the loss of Mike McDaniel. Now, I've always said it's harder to replace great coaches than it is great players. And so I want to see the 49ers I want to see him replace Mike McDaniel because I just know how creative he was and is in the run game.
Interesting. Brian Baldinger on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game. Speaking of the offensive line, because it's my number one concern, and offensive lines can derail a season. You can either really be good and win the Super Bowl, or you can end up like Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl, or Patrick Mahomes a couple years ago in the Super Bowl, where you get no blocking time and time again, especially over the last 12 years, Baldy. And maybe it's the history of the game, where the interior defensive line takes over at football games. But more so, I've seen offensive lines wreck young quarterbacks. So, speaking of quarterbacks, Trey Lance, he's entering his first camp as the starter. That offensive line play can wreck everything. How patient should we be with Trey Lance, knowing about the question marks on the offensive line?
Well, you have to be patient regardless. You just do. He threw 71 passes last year. He started 3 games in the last 2 seasons. He started a total of 19 games since he left high school. You just have to be patient. And I don't know what always that means. There's going to be mistakes made. It's not a bad thing either. Because, if he's a type of a player that's going to learn from his mistakes, then get him out of his system early. And that's how I feel about it. You got to let him make mistakes. In fact, Fred Warner, I think, was on record last year saying it. Like, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Let it, cut it loose. Like he was saying, you've got talent, you've got the ability. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Don't be afraid of what Shanahan's going to say on the sideline or what any fan's going to say. You got to go through it. You got to learn from, and that's the only way you get experience.
Well, I know a running game is a young quarterback's best friend, and the Niners have run the ball really well under Kyle Shanahan. Elijah Mitchell, they have this young kid out of LSU, Trey Sermon. We'll see what's up with that. How do you feel about this backfield for the 49ers as Debo has basically petitioned to say, hey, I don't want to carry the ball 10 times a game. That's too much wear and tear on my body. How do you feel about this backfield, especially if Debo's not running the rock out of the backfield?
Well, I like Elijah Mitchell. I mean, I think he's an every down back. He's a big back that's got great speed, breakaway speed. I mean, he was sensational. I mean, if you just take a look at, say, Jonathan Taylor, who led the league in rushing by over 500 yards last year, you look at the jump that he made between his first and second year. And I'm not comparing Elijah Mitchell to Jonathan Taylor, but they do have some similarities. And, part of it is their top-end speed. And I expect Elijah Mitchell to make a big jump this season. He did play a lot early in the year. He got a chance to play when they had a bunch of injuries, and he kind of took over. But I think he's going to be the number one guy, and I think that's the guy they're going to lean on.
What this defensive line, because I know you love defensive line, especially for the 49ers. They move Armstead inside. You're hoping for somebody opposite Bosa to step up, whether that's Arden Key, the rookie out of USC. But the big question to me is Javon Kinlaw, because losing DJ Jones, he was so good for them. So good for them. What do you expect from Javon Kinlaw if he can stay healthy out there? Because to me, I feel like he's flying under the radar right now. And boy, if he had a big year, that would tell me this defense is a top 5 defense.
Well, look, they drafted him to replace DeForest Buckner. Now, DeForest Buckner has continued to be one of the best 3 techniques in this league. All right, he anchors a great defense in Indianapolis. So that's what he was drafted to be. Now, obviously, the knee injuries and, chronic knee injury has really derailed him. But I did see signs a couple seasons ago playing next to Nick Bosa. I saw, real pass rush, not just, 330 pounds of just mayhem from him. I saw, a plan, and I saw some development. And I think when you play next to Nick Bosa, between the stunts that you run, the pressure that he puts on tackles in an offense, that I thought I started to see Javon Kinlaw really grow. And I'd like to see him play next to Nick this year and really kind of grow together. Because I think, I kind of like to see tackles and ends kind of play games together and really mess with protections and get after the quarterback, whether it's crushing the pocket, running tackle end games. I'd like to see those two really work together and become a real power unit up front.
No, I love where Kinlaw's at as we're talking to Brian Baldinger on the Morning Roast. Football season's officially here. Players report to training camp today in Santa Clara. I saw Javon Kinlaw at a couple Warrior games, and he looked like he was in great shape. And the passion that he spoke with Baldy, saying, look, I stayed in Santa Clara. I want to be right. I've been hurt. I want to play for this team. I want to make an impact. But if he makes an impact alongside Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and Drake Jackson and Ricky out of USC, and you got Kerry Hyder back in the fold, how much is that going to help the secondary that welcomes in Charvarius Ward? I think a lot of Niner fans don't know much about Charvarius Ward, who played for the Kansas City Chiefs. What is he bringing to the table for the secondary?
I love Charvarius. I mean, he was Kansas City played a lot of press man coverage. He was excellent at it. He's sticky. He can run. He's a fiery competitor. I think it was a great signing. L'Jarius Sneed's a little bit younger, so they kept him. He's got another year in his deal. But, Charvarius Ward came into this league as a free agent, undrafted. Andy Reid liked him immediately. It doesn't really make a difference where you come from. He went up against a lot of great receivers in the AFC West and throughout his time in Kansas City. He's been in the postseason every year. I think he's a very solid football player. I expect him to continue to play at a high level. I love the re-signing of Kerry Hyder. I never thought that they should have let him go. He had 8 sacks that last year in San Francisco.
Yep.
And he's an all-effort guy. And if Bosa's screaming off one edge, if Kerry Hyder's coming off the other, that's a pretty good tandem just there alone. And we'll see what Drake Jackson can give you. But he's a kid that's got some length and size to him. He's just like all young guys. Like nobody figures it out the rookie year as a pass rusher. But I expect that room to be a great room. And that's kind of how you got to look at it.
One of my favorite things at training camp is watching the defensive line hit the sled. Chris Kosaric is yelling at them, hot, 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 and they're slamming into the sled.
Bonte tried to jump into the drill.
I wanted to, Baldy, and I'm not a football player. I wanted to jump in the drill. You had me so fired up out there in 100-degree heat. He's been really good, Chris Kosaric, the defensive line coach, at kind of revitalizing players like Kerry Hyder Jr., like Arden Key when he was with the 49ers. They just made a sneaky signing in Robert Nkemdiche, a former first-round pick out of Ole Miss. What is left there? Should we expect anything from him, or is he just a camp body? What does Robert Nkemdiche, the former Cardinal, bring to the table? Because it feels like he's been very underwhelming since he's entered the NFL.
Well, underwhelming is an understatement.
Yeah, no.
He's been invisible.
Yeah.
Invisible. He hasn't stayed healthy. He's been unproductive. But when you're a first-round draft pick, you basically have 10 years to prove that you can't play. So that's why these guys get recycled. I don't know how many teams he's been on now.
Right.
But, look, he's in a great situation because what you're trying to do, I've seen the 49ers activate 10 defensive linemen game day. But most days they have at least 8 active, and probably 9. That's the strength of this team. So, to me, you got a chance to be part of the 8 or 9 man rotation. Like what Arden Key did when he came here was phenomenal. He basically rebuilt his whole career.
Yep.
He did nothing with the Raiders for 3 years. He came here. They gave him a role. They gave him snaps, and he earned them. And he got better and better. And now I don't know where he's at, Jacksonville. But, yeah, so he's down in the Ville. But, like Kendici's got this chance. Like, you can't ask him. He's done nothing but take a paycheck.
Right.
All right, so far in this business. Like, go earn one now, because he hadn't earned anything. But he's got a great chance with a great coach and a great group.
So, and I look at these quarterbacks, and just so often they have their guy, right? Now, the great ones have multiple guys. But, when Alex Smith was here, Vernon Davis and Alex, there was a rapport there. When Colin Kaepernick stepped in, he threw to Vernon, but Crabtree kind of became his go-to guy. And then Crabtree got hurt, and then it was Bolden. Jimmy Garoppolo threw to Kittle. He threw to Debo. Ayuk felt kind of like an afterthought. If you had to kind of guess, who do you think becomes the guy for Trey Lance?
Well, I don't think I don't know that they're going to have one guy. I mean, this offense, the ball's going to get spread around. We've seen days where Kittle was invisible last year.
Yeah.
Long stretches, he was invisible. Ayuk looked like he started the season in the biggest doghouse ever made. And then I don't know what happened, and nobody seems to know, but he eventually got himself out of it and became a really productive player. He's a great route runner. That's a good start. The problem with route runners is, I don't care if it's Cooper Kupp or if it's Devontae Adams, your quarterback has to be patient with you.
Yeah.
Because it takes time to win some of these routes. And like Dak Prescott, I thought, got off Amani Cooper way too frequently, too early. And I think it's a complaint I hear from great route runners. Like, I need time to win, but I'm going to win. So stay with me. Give it an extra tick. And we got to see what, Trey Lance, decides to do. I think he's going to do what the offense tells him to do initially. But then to your point, Joe, I think he's going to find his guy that he trusts, that he believes on third down, red zone, we got to make a play.
Right.
Regardless of what's the call, like, it's not to spite the coach. It's like, this guy's going to win. Like, that was it Johnson?
Juwan Jennings came on hard.
Juwan Jennings. Yeah. Like, I remember talking to Jimmy last year about him. He's like, Baldy, he can't run. He's got no quickness. He doesn't separate. But you know what? I throw it to him. Like, he catches it, Like, he's somehow he's open, but we laugh about it because he doesn't really have any skills. So, like, there's a guy that, isn't going to blow you away with any kind of metrics. But he was valuable. He was a valuable receiver for him last year.
But go ahead, Shasky.
No, I was going to say, Baldy, you do this for a living, and you're so tapped in, and you're so energetic, and you can make a case for every team in the league. But be real with me here. You look at the Niner roster on paper, and I know the games are played on the field of grass or on the turf. You look at them on paper. Where you got them stacking up in the NFL right now?
Well, I mean, you got to, I think, start in your own division. Like, they had owned the Rams, but and they beat them up physically a bunch, and then they got them in the NFC Championship game. I think the Rams are out in front in that division. They've done it. They've got almost everybody back. And San Francisco's got to play a young quarterback, and it's hard to win games, to win a division with a young quarterback. I think they can get there, but I got San Francisco, second right now. After the Rams in their division. But I got them in the playoffs because their defense should be stacked.
Yep. And that defense travels, and that running game travels, and they can win on the road with that defensive front. I'm excited about Danny Gray, a young slot receiver. We'll get to that another time, Baldy. But you brought up earlier in this interview about Mike McDaniels and the creativity that he brought to the table. So now how much pressure is there on Shanahan to replicate some of that, and how much is left on his plate now? He's already calling the plays. But how much influence did Mike McDaniels have? You talked about the creativity and everything. And I always thought, man, this is Shanahan still. This is all Shanahan. Well, how much does he have to fill the void of Mike McDaniels losing or leaving to Miami?
Monty, I think it's huge.
Really?
I do.
You think it's that big, huh?
I think, I could be wrong in this, so maybe I'm misspeaking, but I think he was the highest paid assistant coach in the NFL. Like, they didn't want to lose him. They never wanted to lose him. They didn't want to lose him in Atlanta. Like, he knew the value of Mike. Because he's like, look, it's Revenge of the Nerds with Mike, and because he's willing to put 15 hours in a film room to find one motion that's going to work on Sundays that's going to take Luke Kuechly out of the mix.
Wow.
And you're going to run right by him. Like, his ability to see how a defense reacts, anticipate how a defense is going to react, and then you counter that reaction. Like, he just had this skill that not a lot of people have.
Wow.
And I think it's I don't want to overstate it, saying like you can't overcome it. Everybody can be replaced.
Right.
But I do think the way he saw a game, built the running game, most of those running backs were his guys. Mm-hmm. Like, Raheem Mostert was his guy. Elijah, like, he saw him in college. He saw him in free agency. Like, he had a knack for really going to bat for some of these guys that were running, in that system. And so, he goes all the way back to Mike Shanahan. Like, he just has been in that system since he left Yale. And so it's 20 years that he's built this visual of how he studies running backs in line and line play and defenses. And I don't know that you can just say, well, we're just going to replace him. I don't believe that.
Yeah, so Bobby Turner moves on, a longtime running back coach under the Shanahans, and then they bring in Anthony Lynn, who was fired from Detroit last year. And that was my next question. Anthony Lynn has a reputation of helping running backs. How much does he help maybe fill that void of Mike McDaniels?
And as an outside influence, kind of maybe just changing things up.
Well, he knows the Shanahan system. He played for Mike with the Denver Broncos.
But he's been around for 10 years in different areas. So I'm just curious, is there any outside, stuff that he can infuse to this offense?
Well, you want Anthony Lynn on your staff. Like, he's a good coach, and players respect him. He's got a powerful voice when he speaks. I think, he can help the running game in his own way. I just don't know that he can design motions and shifts and all the things that Mike McDaniel was really influential in doing. I don't know that you can ask Anthony Lynn to be that guy. So they might have to do it a more conventional style, which is fine,
Baldy, you're the best.
I could go 4 hours.
Yeah, we could go 4 hours.
God, I missed you.
We can't wait for you to get back to the Bay Area. I know you're talking about you're trying to get out to Santa Clara August 10th and whatnot. Hopefully you get out here at some point during the preseason and training camp. But boy, we sure missed. You had us so jealous during the offseason. You're out there living in the water, catching fish. You're walking around with your shirt off. Dude, you were living a life,
rattling
Baldy.
sharks' cages.
It was a good off-season, guys. It was good to be me this off-season. I ain't lying.
That's the biggest understatement we've heard all week. It was an okay
we
off
missed
season.
You, buddy.
We did miss you, Baldy.
All right,
good to hear from you.
God, he's the best.
Brian Baldinger.
He's the best.
You ready for football now?
Yeah, I'm ready for football.